Finding a mistake in a Disney movie can be irritating, but it can also be the perfect excuse for revisiting some of our favorite Disney movies. Watch until the end to see how Pocahontas includes some of Disney's biggest mistakes. If this is your first time visiting the things, don't forget to subscribe, and please give this video a big thumbs up. Here's 10 times Disney made huge mistakes. Aladdin's inaccurate anatomy. As soon as they took flight for their magic carpet ride, Jasmine and Aladdin's love story was one for the books. Aladdin is a hilarious Disney movie, loved by generations. However, the movie is not perfect. Disney made one major error when it came to Aladdin's body. Aladdin remains virtually topless for the majority of the film, often only wearing a purple vest. Though he seems pretty chiseled and hairless, Aladdin's pecs are missing nipples. A BuzzFeed article points out that this is an exception from other Disney male characters including Tarzan, King Triton, Milo from Treasure Island, Hercules, and most of the men in Mulan. The inconsistencies emphasize the lack of nipples for Aladdin's character must have been a mistake. However, Aladdin isn't alone in his bare-chested image. A Hello Giggles article pointed out that there are other Disney contemporaries that also seem to have suffered the same neglect, such as Mowgli in The Jungle Book and Gaston from Beauty and the Beast. Do you think this was a conscious decision on Disney's part, or just a mistake? We can't figure out what would dictate the right to bare nipples or not, but it's certainly a hard detail to notice once you're aware of it. Beast's older portrait. The story might be as old as time, but Prince Adam sure isn't. Beauty and the Beast is a timeless classic, and the live-action remake with Emma Watson just makes it that much more relevant to enjoy. Ever notice how every time you watch a movie, you notice more details about them? This can be finding out more about the story or characters involved, but in Disney's case, it can also mean discovering some illogical mistakes. Belle's finding out about Beast's curse is a turning point in their relationship. While the Beast works on showing her more of his vulnerability, Belle begins to see through his hideous exterior. At the beginning of the movie, the audience learns about Prince Adam's vanity and shallowness that resulted in him being cursed to remain a beast forever unless he can find someone to love him before he turns 21. Lumiere expresses that this happened 10 years prior to when the film takes place. That would mean that Prince Adam couldn't have been more than 11 years old when he was cursed by the Enchantress. Yet the portrait of him shows him as a young man. Disney definitely made a mistake with their calculations, but the magic of the movie remains just as effective. Hercules the fiction. Disney's Hercules was absolutely based on Greek mythology, though there are so many mistakes that it should be made clear that Hercules isn't just an adaptation of the myth, but a reimagining. For example, Hercules is a Roman name, so to conform to Greek myth, his name should be spelled Heracles or Heracles. Hera is Hercules' mother in the movie, but this is another mistake. Hercules was born to Zeus and Aklema, who was a mortal human, making Hercules a demigod. The 5 muses in the movie provide the audience with great entertainment, but not with great information, as there are 9 others missing. Hades is a great villain, but he never did try to kill Hercules. Hera, on the other hand, did. She was jealous to find out that Zeus, her husband, had snuck into another woman's bed and had a baby. She wanted to get revenge by killing the child from that union, Hercules. Hades actually played a very minor role in the legend. He wasn't even appointed the rule of the underworld by Zeus. Rather, the two had to roll dice to see who would be in charge. These are just some examples of how a great story doesn't always make it the true story. Cinderella's wedding dress. It has been said that girls dream about their wedding dress from a very young age. A lot of wedding gowns even try to reproduce a princess ball gown look, especially that of Cinderella's. Upon a close look, it seems that Disney had trouble deciding on this perfect dress, as the animated princess is seen wearing 2 different styles in the final scene of the movie. A transformational moment for Cinderella arrives when she is magically greeted by her fairy godmother, who casts a spell to save the day and conjures a beautiful ball gown for Cinderella to wear to the ball. After tirelessly working on a dress that had been destroyed by her stepsisters, the audience's attention is drawn to the importance of the right gown for the occasion with a bibbidi-bobbidi-boo. Apparently, the same attention to outfit detail is not included for Cinderella's dress. From her carriage, it can clearly be seen that Cinderella is wearing a long-sleeved gown. However, from the back window, as the newlyweds kiss, Cinderella is shown in a different dress that is sleeveless with a puffy shoulder strap only. Cinderella's fairy godmother is nowhere to be seen, yet somehow this wardrobe change is included without any explanation. Ratatouille's hidden compliment. What's not to love about a movie set in Paris, centered around food with an adorable rat protagonist? When Anton Ego, the scary skeleton-like food critic, comes to judge the dishes served at Gusteau's, he's impressed with the restaurant's comeback. Years earlier, Anton Ego left an insulting review for the restaurant that he categorized as another tourist trap. While trying to seem insulting, Disney made a mistake that completely undermines this character's bad intentions. In his negative review, he claimed that Gusteau has found his place in history alongside chefs like Monsieur Boyardee. It can only be assumed that this was a jab at the fact that the food tasted like it was processed. One thing that Disney failed to verify is that Chef Ettore Hector Baudry was a successful businessman who created the brand, but was also a very talented chef. Among his accomplishments are his position as head chef at the famous Plaza Hotel, his ownership of his own restaurant, and his catering for President Woodrow Wilson's wedding reception. Turns out a comment meant as an insult turned out to be a compliment. It doesn't seem like Disney did their research for this line, but the joke still seems to land anyway. The Emperor's New Groove. The Emperor's New Groove stands out as being very different from a typical Disney movie. For one thing, there isn't much of an emphasis on love or romance, and the main character, Kuzco, doesn't have a love interest at all for the duration of the movie. Meanwhile, he's not very likable, compassionate, or sympathetic, unlike most of Disney's main characters. Finally, the movie points out parts that don't really make sense, and the comedy and pace of dialogue have a different feel to them than what is usual for a Disney movie. All of these differences could be in part due to one of Disney's big mistakes that can be perceived through an error in the movie's opening song. Kuzco is called an enigma and a mystery in Mesoamerican history. Disney got the geography wrong when it comes to the movie's setting, as it is based off the Incan Empire, which was further south than parts of Northern and Central America. The movie actually is set in the Andes Mountains, which is near modern-day Peru. In fact, the movie was originally titled The Kingdom of the Sun, and it was intended to be a completely different movie. Maybe this mistake points to the earlier plans Disney had in store. The Lion King, Savannah Animals. Who can't conjure up the opening to The Lion King as all the animals in the savannah congregate to welcome their new king? Sadly, don't plan on taking away any lessons on natural habitats from the movie, as Disney made several mistakes. In one take, giant anteaters and leafcutter ants are shown, neither of which can be found on the entire continent of Africa, as they are both native to the Americas. Shadowland is banned from Simba's adventures, as the elephant graveyard is deemed to be dangerous territory. It turns out that elephant graveyards aren't actually a thing. Though elephants do roam away from their herd in order to die alone, there's no evidence that they go to a collective resting spot. Also, the likelihood of all these animals being in the same spot in Africa is extremely low, as they occupy different regions of the continent. Of course, in a movie where animals talk and sing to one another in English, we need to be able to suspend our disbelief. Nevertheless, it's important to realize that what we see in movies, even about nature, could very well be part of the fiction instead of based on facts. Magical swords and instruments in Frozen. Frozen was a huge hit for its original storyline, hit songs, message, and characters we love. The story was just different enough for it to be refreshing, but included all of the Disney tropes, including protagonists discovering who they are and where they belong. One typical Disney aspect it also included, maybe unintentionally, is a couple undoubtful mistakes. Whenever magic is involved in a movie, the rules and laws surrounding the magic has to be taken with a grain of salt. In Frozen's, Elsa's ice queen powers are explained, but Hans' sword-wielding powers are not. Hans' sword appears and disappears several times throughout the movie, including in the final scene. However, the sword's magical properties are never explained. Unexplained magical or mistakes in objects don't stop at Hans' sword. Kristoff is also shown playing a musical instrument that obviously has 4 strings, but only 3 tuning pegs. He also makes a mistake in the lyrics, using the plural of reindeer incorrectly and says reindeers instead. That is a particularly odd mistake, as Kristoff spends much of his time around the animals and would have known the terminology regarding them. In any case, these unexplained details are clearly mistakes, unless Disney is waiting for a sequel to provide us with answers. Forbidden Waltz. Everyone loves watching movie characters break out in dance moves, even when they're animated. A romantic dance between a prince and a princess has been the apex of several of Disney movies. Sometimes style has the potential to outweigh substance, leading to some mistakes. Disney definitely fell prey to this error in Sleeping Beauty, when Prince Philip and Aurora dance their waltz. Prince Philip does a great job at pointing out the movie's time period to the audience when he tells his father that he is living in the past, as it is now the 14th century. The waltz, on the other hand, was only popularized as a style of dance in the 16th century. The waltz didn't spread through Europe until the 17th century. In fact, in the 14th century, the only kind of physical contact a couple could enjoy while dancing would be hand contact while line dancing. Even during the time of the waltz, it was discouraged by older generations who taught it to be incredibly obscene and inappropriate. Disney made a huge mistake when they had their main character dance with their prince's hands on her waist. This would have been scandalous at the time. Disney has been caught up in controversies long before we even realized. Pocahontas' problems. Pocahontas is so riddled with mistakes it had to make the top of our list. Not only are these mistakes plentiful, but they are also quite serious and lead to negative stereotypes against Native communities and customs, as it misrepresented a historical history that actually happened. For starters, even our protagonist's name is one of Disney's mistakes, as it's only a nickname that translates to mean the naughty one or spoiled child. Disney's main mistake has to be that they turned down the Powhatan people who wanted to help consult on the movie. Ultimately, the Powhatan people expressed their disapproval of the movie and say that it distorts history beyond recognition. It's one thing for Disney to want to tell a story that culturally does not belong to them, but it was a huge mistake to not have consultation by a member of the community whose story they were attempting to tell. It also led to further mistakes in the movie, including Pocahontas' age, who would only have been 10 or 11. It's one thing to make a fictional narrative and make mistakes in the process. The fact that Pocahontas was a real story and her nation faced British colonizers with a lot more conflict and much less romance than Disney shows makes it one of its biggest mistakes. And that's all for 10 times Disney made huge mistakes. If this is your first time visiting the things, don't forget to subscribe and please give this video a big thumbs up. See you next time!